The great American nature writers and conservationists, they weren't secular, they weren't sectarian, but they were very spiritual, and they felt spiritually connected to wild places.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thrilled you guys are open to that conversation. I think that's what's going to get younger people up here, frankly.
Welcome to episode 5 of the Paddle and Portage podcast. I'm the Lord Baxley.
Well, I'm the freshest Freddy in the Boundary Waters, putting canoes on the water, paddling around the Boundary Waters, looking at the snow still on some of the south shorelines, catching crappie, waiting for the fishing opener.
Well, that is a lot of things, and it's only gonna keep getting more.
In other words, I'm feeling really excited because canoe season has arrived! I haven't been this excited for a paddling season since last paddling season.
Well, that sounds appropriate. I mean, it's begun. The rivers are gushing. Of course, not like the last couple of years, but it is springtime. It feels like spring. The migrating birds are arriving. The morning chorus is a little louder every single day as that sun rises a little earlier every single morning. Pretty soon here, we're going to have the longest paddling days anybody can think of.
And we are coming up right now, like on fishing opener weekend, so we'll be sharing some stuff out in the Boundary Waters. But we had a friend, guest, visitor recently head up and share some insights and wisdom and experience, stories with us. And we're going to head out right to the edge of the Boundary Waters and go up the Gunflint Trail on the episode today. Gather around a campfire too. We're going to be talking with Tony Jones, a Minnesota author, podcaster, has a new book called The God of Wild Places. And we met Tony at Canoecopia. We'd known Tony for years from his writing in the Star Tribune and biggest newspaper in Minnesota and other places, but connected at Canoecopia and then made this trip happen. I love when you plant that seed and then it actually happens, because how many times in everyone's lives is it, hey, I'll come up and maybe we'll do some kind of thing. Maybe I'll come up and go canoeing or fishing with you. And it's logistics, get in the way, life and stuff. But it actually happened this time.
It actually happened, and not only did it mark the start of paddling season, it also marked the start of new friendship and the start of diving into some new ideas.
In just a minute, we're going to head up the Gunflint Trail.
This episode brought to you by Sawtooth Outfitters, conveniently located on Highway 61 in Tofty. Whether it's your first trip or you're an experienced voyager, they're here to outfit you with the right gear and knowledge to ensure an unforgettable trip. From their ultralight canoe rentals to their outdoor gear store, stocked with clothing, maps, souvenirs, everything you need to be covered. It's not too late to plan a trip. Check out sawtoothoutfitters.com or give them a call to start planning today. And support for Paddle and Portage comes from Ely Outfitting Company. Located in downtown Ely, their friendly and knowledgeable team shares expert Boundary Waters trip planning and routing advice. Ely Outfitting Company offers complete outfitting services, lightweight canoe rentals, and professionally guided tours. Now booking 2024 canoe trips. Plan your Boundary Waters trip now at elyoutfittingcompany.com. Successful Boundary Waters canoe trips start with Ely Outfitting Company.
And this episode of the Paddle and Portage podcast is brought to you by Tuscarora Lodge and Canoe Outfitters. Located on Round Lake, Tuscarora is a full-service Boundary Waters outfitter serving Gunflint Trail entry points. They're now booking 2024 canoe trips and cabins. You can check them out online at TuscaroraCanoe.com or find them on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at Tuscarora Canoe. that was our little island or peninsula pit stop. Taking in all the scenery of Prune Lake. I mean, it'd be so cool if there was walleye in here, you know?
Yeah, oh my gosh.
It's just bizarre that it's like, I don't know any other lake around that is like, just...
One species?
Yeah, and that's crappie lake, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's very unusual for...
Up here, yeah.
Like, how that came to be and why they're all stunted like this. And
Yeah.
how they sustain, and are these like the same fish that I was catching 8 years ago? They just haven't grown. Like, what's the deal with this lake, you know? For me, when I would think of going to church, it's like, okay, now I'm in church, and there's this different place and way of thinking and being.
Yeah.
Is that what this is for you in this kind of new space for you?
I think for me it's deliberate. You know, it has to be just, I think it has to be conscious. There are these phrases in the religion world, like have a spiritual discipline or mindfulness, you know, which is, or, you know, are you fully conscious? Are you really present in your surroundings? So I don't think it's different than church in that when you go into, if you walk in most churches, except the ones that are built to look like shopping malls, like old school Catholic cathedrals, you walk into a place like that and you're like, oh, this is a different space. This is an architecturally different space meant to communicate something. The wilderness isn't so much like that. I think it's more incumbent upon us when we come out here. Because, you know, people come out here and they can just be like, oh, I'm just here to hammer the fish, you know. That's it. Hammer the fish. And you see the guys with the, like, decked out canoes with all the gear and stuff. Mm-hmm. And there's another way to enter the wilderness, and that's to be mindful of it as a sacred place and a place, you know, like this place. Like, we just don't have that many places like this left. So, yeah, for me, it's more of a conscious choice. I write in the book about how when I was a kid, we'd go up to our family land in Crow Wing County. We have this mile-long driveway through this like white pine forest, and we'd just be like, "Oh, we're almost to the cabin." We didn't even pay attention to the land. We just wanted to get to the lake and water ski and suntan and do all the stuff you do, you know, when you're a middle school kid. And now I'm like, yeah, the lake is great, but really the woods. I want to be in the woods all the time. Mm-hmm. So that was just a mind shift for me, and I think that's it more. You know, it's more about the framework, the mental framework you have when you enter the wilderness.
And did that happen today on this even short paddle? Like,
yeah, I mean, anytime I'm in a canoe with a buddy and a dog, come on. Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, what else would I be doing today? I'd go to the gym. I'd check my email, you know. Mm-hmm. Today was trash day. I put the trash out before, you know. Yeah. It's like all those mundane things of life that you got to do when you live in modern society. But when you come out here, you can just like tap out on that stuff, even if it's just for an afternoon. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it's like we're getting spit on right now. It's kind of misting and a little cold, and who cares?
Yeah, and in northern Minnesota, is that for you because of the proximity of where you live and your history? But does this also have a special place for you?
Yeah. Yeah, it might be like when you were in, you know, lived out west and you could see mountains. People are like, why would you go to Minnesota? You even said that, it sounds like, at first, right?
Yeah, I said it, yeah.
Why would I leave these mountains? Uh-huh. Look at the snow up there and look at that, you know. Yeah, I know. Some people are like, people have told me this since they've read the book, like, oh my gosh, I love it. I thought the chapter called Place that's about like the land in Minnesota would be the most boring chapter that the fewest people would connect with. People really, I've gotten a ton of positive feedback about it, which is interesting. But then people also say, like, my thing's the ocean. I love water, or I love rivers, or I like mountains, or whatever. Yeah, I like lakes. I mean, ocean's fine, but man, lakes. Lakes and balsam and spruce and white pines and jack pines. Yeah, that feels like the place.
And the trip you did, the Border Lakes trip with your son, and like the whole experience there, did that bring you closer? Were you already feeling that about here?
No, that 2019 trip really cemented it for me. And like you, I'm a writer. So, when I came up to do that trip, it was the trip was, the Star Tribune said, will you take your, I'd been like talking to Bob Timmons, the outdoors editor at the Strib, about different stuff. And he was doing these big summer series back in the day. And the summer before, it was a woman who hiked the Superior Trail, And then I was like, well, we should do this thing. Or maybe he pitched it to me or whatever. But then he's like, I think that's a great story. You take your son who's never been to the Boundary Waters and then write about it for the paper. So for me as a writer, that just makes it that, to be able to come home from a trip and then write about it, I don't know, that was 3,000 or 4,000 words between those 6 stories or whatever that I wrote for the Strib. That always makes it more poignant for me, because that's how I process stuff. I mean, I talk a lot and I'll talk to my wife about it or talk to my kid about it, but to sit down and have to write about it, that helped me make it more special, make this place more special. And then to write about it, and then to have people come up to you and be like, oh my gosh, I still remember those stories you wrote about the Boundary Waters or whatever. That makes it even more poignant to me, because people came up to me after those stories and were like, I remember when my dad took me to the Boundary Waters for the first time, or I went in with my Boy Scout troop, or I went in with my church youth group, Oh, your story just brought, I went to, I don't really go to church anymore, but I did go to church with my mom one of those Sundays. And people, all these people, because, church is full of old people and they still like get the newspaper and they'd all read it. So they're all coming up to me. Oh my gosh, I read your story about the Boundary Waters. And that was very gratifying. I mean, today, just like even this thing right now, the fact that you and I have no cell coverage where we're standing on this rock is just like glorious. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
It's freaking great to escape that. Yeah.
Well, it's here. I mean, you could come here.
No, it's always here. Yeah, it's true. And I do. Yeah, I said in the book, I was one of these people who was like, oh, I went to the Boundary Waters when I was a kid, but then I never, well, it's such an important place, and, I'll like write my legislator about protecting it, but did I ever go there? Not really. And then I came back really during some of the hardest years of my life, and I was like, I remember coming home and saying, I am going to go back every year. As long as I'm able, I'll go back once a year. Like, that is just a vow. I'm making a vow. I made all these other vows in my life, like marriage vow. That didn't work out. Ordination. Yeah, that didn't really work out. But this vow I'm going to keep. Come up here at least once a year, more if possible. And go to a lot of other wild places too that I love. Yeah.
Here at Paddle and Portage, it matters to us to follow the legislation that happens at the state capitol and the federal level, really, as it relates to the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness, and that's why we bring you information as it unfolds. And Joe, you've been following some particular things that are happening.
I have been. You can find definitely a number of news articles about it at paddleandportage.com, bills in Congress, and at the state capitol in St. Paul, including one called Prove It First. It's spearheaded or really supported by a group called Friends of the Boundary Waters, based here in Minnesota. And the idea behind this law is really simple. Before Minnesota would permit a copper sulfide mine in the state, there would have to be somewhere else in the U.S. a copper nickel mine that operates for at least 10 years and then is closed for at least 10 years without having any form of pollution. And if that can occur, then Minnesota would say, okay, well, this can be done. They've proven it first, so now we'll agree to permit this mine if it still meets all the other requirements that are already in place. So that's a piece of legislation driven by the Friends. You can find out more about them and their causes, including more about this legislation at friends-bwca.org.
Hey, Dan.
Oh, hey, Claire. How's it going?
Good, but boy, is it a busy time of year for us here at Sawbill Canoe Outfitters. The ice is out, our staff is starting to arrive, and we are putting the final touches on our store, where we carry everything from t-shirts to groceries to camping gear to souvenirs. It's quite the operation here at the end of the Sawbill Trail.
Yeah, it is a lot of work, but it's exciting this time of year too. With the lakes opening up, people are planning their trips in earnest. So we are also spending a lot of time talking routing advice and helping people find permits.
That's right, permits. Even if you didn't snag a permit on opening day, there are still many available in the Sawbill area. Our location right on Sawbill Lake makes it convenient for us to service all the entry points in the Tofty district. If you're not putting in right here on Sawbill, we do offer a shuttle service and a free of charge tie-down service to get you where you need to go.
If overnight trips aren't your thing, we also manage 3 National Forest campgrounds right on the wilderness edge that offer great opportunities for car camping and fun day trips into the BWCA. Me and Claire and our fantastic crew can help talk through your options.
The Sawbill crew is pretty great, and they are just as passionate about helping people visit the Boundary Waters as we are. Most of them have worked here for multiple seasons, and some for the better part of a decade or more. Speaking of great people, we are excited to be sponsors for the new Paddle and Portage podcast. What an excellent team they have, and we're looking forward to more storytelling and adventure.
Tony, I think it actually would be helpful. A lot of people that are listening haven't read the book, probably, right?
Let's try to remedy that.
Exactly. Can you give, what's the story arc?
The tagline?
Maybe the tagline and the story arc.
Well, the tagline is, a pastor walks out of the church and into the woods in pursuit of the God he's lost. I'll tell you a funny story. My mom read the manuscript 2 years ago. It's a very different book now, but she read it and she said, Tony, you're never going to get invited to preach ever again. I said, well, really? Why do you think that, Mom? She said, you spell God with a lowercase g. I'm like, you think that's the most that's what people aren't going to like? So
that's a very mom thing to say.
I know, isn't it? I did change it, actually. No, it's with a capital G in that last chapter. But what's the story arc? In brief, my life fell apart. Personal turmoil. And I lost my career in a very short period of time, what I'd built. And spent a lot of time, making a platform and becoming this kind of a B-list celebrity, and it all went away very quickly, and I felt pulled to the outdoors. That was the place where I could get away from lawyers and the internet and all the drama that was part of my daily life. So then the book is my way of just processing it in writing, what I went through, processing it in writing. And I, like I was saying to Joe when we were out paddling today, for me, writing is a big part of how I process stuff in my life. It always has been. It's become even, I think, more so. So this book is it's not really a memoir. I mean, it's probably categorized as a memoir, but it's not really a straight-ahead memoir, because you've read it. It's more thematic. It kind of generally follows my life from about age 30 to about age 50. But it's thematically arranged around different things that I've learned in the outdoors.
And your dog.
Yeah, and there's a chapter about my 3 dogs that have like been the 3 chapters of my adult life, about 10 years each. Well, this guy turns 6 tomorrow, actually. It's Crosby's birthday tomorrow.
Oh, happy early birthday, Crosby.
Yeah, happy birthday. Happy birthday Eve, Cross. Yeah. Dogs, death, risk, place. Yeah, different themes. It took me a long time to get there. I worked on this book for like 10 years, over 10 years. And it took me a long time and a new literary agent to help me figure out like how to frame it. And so it's a much different book than the book I set out to write. Yeah.
And it still feels like a pretty accurate representation of your process.
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, for one thing, it's like the market for memoirs by middle-aged white guys is a little soft right now.
No kidding.
So I had to come up with a different way to tell the story. So it's like, no, this isn't really a memoir, and it's not really a self-help book. It's like, these are lessons I learned in the wilderness that saved my life. And it's funny because I've written a lot of books, and all the previous books were all prescriptive. Like, here's how you should pray. Here's how you should think about God. Here's how you should do this or should do that. And this book is denuded of any should kind of language. It's all like, this is what worked for me. Yep. This is my life. This is my journey. Some people have been like, in this book why aren't you so hard on the church? I'm like, no, I'm just telling my story. Like, the church may be great for you. For me, it doesn't work anymore. But I'm not casting aspersions on anybody for whom the church works. It's just like, for me, it became a very painful place because of the way I was treated as a pastor. So I left it. That's what I had to do. But I'm like, you don't have to. But for me, I did.
What is the substance of these places that could be the Boundary Waters or whatever? What is it about your experience of that place that liberates you?
One thing that I came to as I was writing, and that I think the Boundary Waters is a perfect example of, case study of, for me, for my life, is that in my former life, call it church or whatever, everything was very regularized. Everything was at right angles. Everything was very, we started worship on the hour and you ended it on the hour, everything about it, we did it every Sunday. The liturgy was basically the same, and you became so you could do it by rote, And people, I think a lot of people take great comfort in that. They come to church or they go to synagogue or they go to temple or the mosque or whatever, and they're like, the people have told me this, my life is so out of control, at least when I go to church, I know what I'm going to get.
Yep.
It's the same, there's no surprises. And that worked so well for me until it didn't work well for me at all. Like, it came to, everything fell apart. It felt more like it was, is it centrifugal force when everything goes flying out, on all directions? And so then I think, I bet you guys can do it, and a lot of your listeners can close you could close your eyes and think of a Boundary Waters campsite. Mm-hmm. And you walk, you pull up your canoe. We always do we'll have somebody in the bow of one of the canoes go up there and tell us how many tent pads there are up there, you know, right?
The scout.
And give us a grade. And it's like, it's a B+. Are we everybody good with a B+, or you want to keep trying to get an A-, you know?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so, but no campsite is perfect. Everyone is different. And then you get up there and you're like, oh, this is not a great campsite. Or look at you're like, oh, that's a widowmaker. I'm not going to set my tent up under that tree, you know, or there's no firewood here. Or you go back into the woods and all the wood is fallen and rotting, or, oh my gosh, this place burned 3 years ago. There's like nowhere to hang my hammock, etc., etc. Like every one of these campsites is a chaotic mess and beautiful. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you end up paddling past it 5 years later and we're like, remember when we stayed at that campsite? We thought it was so crappy and we ended up having such a great night there. Remember that? You know, these kind of things, this became more the draw for me. Like I was so much more interested in going to places where there are no right angles, where everything is not regularized, where things don't start and stop at the top of the hour, where cell phones can't reach you. And I'm like, okay, this mess of the wilderness is much more reflective of what my inner life is like. Mm-hmm. My inner life is a mess. Mm-hmm. Divorce and custody and losing my career and getting foreclosed on in my house and all this stuff. So I want to go spend time in places that this seems more reflective of my real life, like out in the wilderness. And yeah, I can close my eyes right now and think of 5 different campsites where, you know, you just think of I just think of walking from a tent pad back to the latrine at any Boundary Waters campsite. And how many dead trees do you walk by? How many, you know what I mean? And there's shit growing out of those dead trees. Mm-hmm. There's moss on them, and they're full of insects, and there's maybe the new trees growing in the compost of the decomposing old tree. I'm like, that's more like my life. That's what my life is like. The walk to the Biffy, you know. That's a lot more real to me than the walk through the mall, or the walk to the front of a church, or the walk in all these civilized spaces that human beings have made. Yeah.
You talked a lot about the track you were on. Mm-hmm. You know, like I did the thing. You know, you did all the things.
I did.
You checked all the boxes. You fulfilled your roles perfectly to become a minister, to become the ideal version of you that you thought you needed to be. And that was pretty empty. Mm-hmm. And you talk about how that the chaos, right, of the inside, and what was really going on with your marriage and divorce, all these things that we all, I think, relate to, the realness. Mm-hmm. And when you go into these wild places, whether to hunt or to be alone or with friends, there aren't the boxes, or there isn't a need for you to be any of those things, except whatever you are. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering what role that plays for you in your experience of place.
I mean, I still struggle, as you know from reading the book. My ego is a big part. I mean, we all have ego. Like it gets us all into a lot of trouble, and it got me in a lot of trouble. Narcissism got me in a lot of trouble, and
you're in good company with that. All
yeah,
the way around.
Yeah. I mean, the truth is, you got to have a little bit of narcissism to say, let's turn on a microphone and record our conversation and broadcast it to the world, because we're eminently interesting to other people. You know, I get it. Like that's still a thing. That's still a thing for me. But it's true that I did. All those things ended up failing me. All those things that were supposed to give me a great deal of, I mean, all those things that were externally signs of success. So yeah, I mean, the marriage, the dog, the house in Edina, the job, and then the book deals, and then oh my God, then a PhD in theology, and then and you're told, if you have good parents, you're told as a kid, like, oh, all those, that's not what's going to make you happy. What's going to make you happy is being fulfilled and being surrounded by people who love you, and this is more important than all those things. But of course, you don't believe it. Like, you go out and you strive. At least I did. I was striving all the time.
And achieving.
I was really good at that stuff. And then, so it's very discombobulating when it all goes away really quickly. Like, I really felt, I mean, I hate cliches, but like the rug was pulled out from under me, or my pins got knocked out from under me, or I just felt like I don't even know who I am anymore. Because what I knew was I'm this person. I'm this platonic ideal of like pastor and Christian author and like kind of Christian celebrity guy. And when it went away, then I'm like, well, who the hell am I if I'm not that? And I think you're right. I mean, sometimes in the outdoors world, there are still people who are like that. Oh, yeah. Like, oh my God, I'm the greatest guide in the boundary waters. I know how to catch the best fish, or like I have the greatest TV show, or I do that. There's still people doing that in the outdoors. That's not me. That's not my life in the outdoors. I mean, I'm not going to write a how-to book about how to be the best boundary waters guide, because it's too late for me, frankly. I'm just getting into this stuff in my like 50s, and so now I'm just trying to find joy and fulfillment in what I'm doing. And hopefully, I think it's inevitable we play roles. I'm still a husband. My kids are grown, but I'm still a father. I'm still a brother and a son, and so I have roles to fulfill in life. Hopefully those are a bit more authentic and organic than the roles I was striving so hard to fill before. Yeah. And I think the wilderness has a way of like, the wilderness is very humbling. When I take people in the boundary waters, I use only map and compass. I don't know, there's no GPS. And I tell them, I'm like, we will get lost. Like, we will search in vain for a portage that we can't find. And you get turned around and stuff like that. And I remember when I started bringing people up here, if I started getting lost, I'd start feeling that panicky feeling. Like, I'd start sweating and be like, oh, these people are counting on me, and I'm letting them down, and what are they going to think about me if we miss our portage and we can't get to the campsite we want tonight? And now I'm like, I don't give a shit what any of these people think about me. Like, I'm just glad to be out here, and this is part of the journey. Like, it's just all part of the process, and we get where we get, and you can't control the weather, and you can't control the wind, the rain, so I think that too, just the rawness of the wilderness strips away some of that, because a lot of those roles are so like human made. A big part of the book is, the sublimity of the wilderness, how it's sublime, being in the wilderness is an overwhelming experience, and it reminds you how freaking small you are. And I just want to be reminded of that. It seems way more emotionally healthy than the life I was living before.
Yeah. And so that part about ego and the roles that we play in our lives, and maybe this is it's certainly less true when I'm guiding or when you're taking a group out, but it's like there's this opportunity to not have to be any of those things through which we self-define in the company of this wild place. And I wonder if you experience that.
Yeah, I think I do. The feedback I get after I bring people out here is, of course, they are overwhelmed by it. They love it. It's incredible. They were scared. They were wet. All the things I told them, you're going to be wet. You're going to be wet for 6 days. Like, your feet will never be dry. And they don't really believe you until they come out and do it. I also think, I think I'm pretty good at provoking conversations with people. And I think it's probably what made me pretty good as a pastor at times. But now I can do it without all those trappings of that institutionalized religion, and just be out like around a campfire at night and asking provocative questions of people, which frankly a lot of people are afraid to ask strangers hard questions. But I think when we're out there in the wilderness, it's, I don't know, if it's more acceptable or there's just no escape, you know? You can ask.
I mean, you have trapped them at a campsite against their their ability to depart.
Yeah, where are they going to go? And so you can ask really probing questions, and people, you know, I mean, youth pastors all know this because they take kids into the Boundary Waters, and Boy Scout troop leaders know this. They take kids on the Boundary Waters. When you take people out there, it's crazy. People are more vulnerable, I think. You know, I don't know what it is. It's no cell phone. They lose all the trappings of civilization that cause people to be so guarded. Mm-hmm. And it's raw, you know, you're out there and you haven't showered and you smell. And I led a group of people out there last September, and we went through Big Sag, and then we crossed American Point, and we pulled into one of those portages right at the top of American Point just for lunch, and then we were going to keep going. And I had told them, like, be really careful getting in and out of canoes, and we practiced it, and et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know, our group was six or seven people. 3 of them fell getting out of their canoes. 3 people had blood streaming down their, you know, you get this image in your mind, right, of somebody who cuts on a sharp rock, they cut their leg, and it's kind of, there's also water, and so you just see this like kind of smear of blood dripping down their legs into their wool socks. And I mean, everybody was fine, but it was embarrassing and painful, and I'm just kind of like, you guys, you got to be really careful getting out of canoes. Like I told you, you know, you have a few experiences like that. I had one where a couple years ago we had a guy, and he was having some GI problems on this trip. And
he had the shits.
And his name is Chris. Great guy. Just love him to death. And we were setting up our tents and stuff at this campsite on, I think we were on Jasper. And there was one woman in our group, like 5 guys and 1 woman. And she's on the Biffy. So we have this deal where, like, there's the toilet paper in the Ziploc bag with the hand sand, and it's like at the end of the Biffy. And if it's gone, someone's at the Biffy, right?
Yep.
So a lot of people do this. Yep. Yeah, classic. So it's gone. So she's at the Biffy, and Chris is like, says, "Oh no, here it comes. What am I supposed to do?" And he's like, "I'm gonna shit my pants." And we're like, "Drop your pants!" Like, whatever you gotta do. And I just remember, I mean, we all turned away, of course. He's like setting up his tent, and he just yells, "Katie, bar the door!" And just explosion.
Oh,
you know, just explosion. And when you see another adult human like that, that's like, what are you going to do at that point? You're going to sit around the campfire that night and you're going to laugh. Like,
yeah.
You've seen me at my worst. Why am I going to be guarded in my conversation with you now? You've literally seen me at like the most humiliating that a human being can experience. So I might as well tell you about every other piece of crap in my life, you know? So I think there's some of that too. It just, the wilderness just strips away those ways that we guard ourselves, and we posture ourselves, and we wear masks. You know, there's the postmodern philosopher Jean Baudrillard wrote a book called Simulacra and Simulation. It's in the Matrix. It's actually the book that Neo has those like cards in. Thomas Anderson has those cards in, and it was a big influence on the Wachowski sisters when they wrote that film. And he writes in there about the panopticon that he knew was coming, and that is that we would always be on camera or on stage, because this is the way of postmodern life. Like, we always have a microphone in front of us. We're always shooting videos. This is way before. I mean, he wrote this in like 1984. He just predicted this coming. The panopticon. Like, we're on camera all the time, so we always have to be acting. And I think the wilderness is one of those last places where you can like get naked and you're not putting on a mask, you're not acting. There's no cameras, you know. It's just you and the water and the paddle and your buddies. You know?
Yeah. What is the God of wild places?
I don't know that I can answer what is the God of wild places other than to say the characteristics of that God, I think, are a God who's a God who desires for us to really embrace what it means to be creatures on this planet, to be in touch with our ancestors and the way they lived. I mean, one of my real epiphanies in this book was that I'm here, I exist in 2024 because I had some really successful ancestors who like evaded tigers and found enough meat and berries to survive long enough to procreate so that I could be here. And I'm like, wow, what they did, I want to do. Like, I want to honor their success by trying to learn all those skills that I feel like I'd lost. I can't speak for anybody else that I'd lost. So I think the God of Wild Places honors that success of our ancestors. I think the God of Wild Places wants us to be honest. I think I wasn't totally honest earlier in my life. And honesty is, now I'm just like, so for one of the things in the book, you know, there's a lot about hunting in the book, and I refuse to use euphemisms. I don't talk about harvesting an animal. I'm like, I kill animals and I eat them because I'm sick of euphemisms. I'm sick of trying to sand the sharp edges off of life.
Yeah, because it's really painful and brutal.
Life is fucking brutal.
Yeah.
And
yes.
Yeah, life has really hurt me. And I mean, I've survived it physically, barely at times, and I barely survived it emotionally. And I just choose to live a more honest life. And I think the God of Wild Places honors that kind of honesty. In the wild, there's just, like I said earlier, it's just the wild places just like strip away all the bullshit that we build up in modern civilization to inoculate ourselves against risk and death and pain and whatever. And now we have like these epidemics of mental illness, you know, and people are really, really struggling. And modern society was supposed to solve all those problems, but it hasn't. So I think, I mean, if the one thing I'd say with confidence about the God of Wild Places is the God of Wild Places is calling me out into the wilderness. In the same way I felt called in like 7th grade into the church to be a minister, now the God of Wild Places is calling me out of those spaces and into wild places, yeah.
Whether or not you've heard of Tony Jones before this podcast episode, he definitely is outspoken in his critical thinking, his desire to question the status quo, and his drive to really be a part of these wild places. And Freddie, I love a good discussion. I want to invite our listeners, if you have your own thoughts on Tony's ideas and experiences, we definitely want to hear from you. It's an important topic that touches all of us in different ways.
Right, and I also really recommend checking out Tony's book. I really enjoyed reading The God of Wild Places. It wasn't a book that I knew about till Canoecopia. Tony handed us a copy. It just came out this spring. It's a new book, and I think I read it in a day and a night. Like, I sat down with it and was immersed in it. It's reader friendly, and Tony's a smart guy. I mean, that's just the bottom line. You're just an intelligent person sharing a memoir of sorts. So thanks for Tony for driving up here, bringing up his dog. I love Crosby.
Crosby, we love you.
Crosby the dog.
Best canoe dog known to modern Kevlar history.
And a Royalex that day, but
oh shoot, that too.
So thanks for Tony, and so glad you're with us here on the podcast as we enter the water, and the start of the paddling season is here. We'll see you in the Boundary Waters, people. Please follow us.
Summer's night. Oh, there's enough of them in a summer's night. Well, you can look to Venus, you can look to Mars. I will set my sights by the northern star, and in the deep dark blue come the northern lights. Oh, and in the deep dark blue come the northern lights. Sing when I paddle canoe, feeling, not thinking if the strokes are true. We're gonna get through to the other side. Now, out in the night, the waves beat the shore. You can hear 'em pounding, you can hear 'em roar. Oh, roll me, rock me in my dreams. You can roll me, rock me in my dreams. So I like to sing, I love to dance. I play the fool if I got the chance. All around the campfire light. All around the campfire light. All round, all round, all round the campfire light.